Welcome to the Yoga Conversations podcast. This is your host, Harish Punjabi. We talk with yoga, meditation, and wellness practitioners. We explore this mystic space, try to dissect it, and make it accessible for everyone. Let's begin with the show. Welcome, everyone. Today, we have a very special guest with us, and his name is Anuj Wadhwa. He's from Delhi. His main purpose in life is to work with busy, ambitious people who are having unproductive lives and to help them be refreshed and energized throughout the day. His key interests are to explore the human mind and to understand the science of habits. Also, he's a certified yoga teacher, a Vipassana meditator, speaker, and a business coach. Welcome, Anuj.
Pranam.
Pranam. So, Anuj, I'll jump right in. I was going through your bio as well as your talks, and I saw that you visited Rishikesh multiple times. So, what are
Yep.
your thoughts on Rishikesh that makes you go there every time?
The first memory I have of Rishikesh is small gullies and Gobar. And I went with my mom. She went to drop me. She was wondering why is he going to such places to learn some mystical art which they didn't have much idea of, because back in 2012 yoga was not in the mainstream, and it was considered something as for people who've lost interest in life. Yeah, and when I was walking through those gullies, I felt like I'm going to a real India and a village, and I felt like I'm not an Indian, I'm coming from another country to actually explore India. The primary highlight for me for Rishikesh is Gangaji, the river, the sound of the river, which is constantly in the background wherever you are. I think there's
Right.
something so healing to that, and that had an impact on my life for sure.
Thing is, I've too been to Rishikesh, and that was, I guess, around a year back, and that was my first time. I went with my wife, and it was uh, the Ganga itself was like the first aspect of that I don't want to leave this place. You work on a lot of habit formations and lifestyle changes. How were
Hmm.
your growing up years before taking the yogic path?
Yeah, so I started exploring nightlife. I started consuming intoxicants, started with alcohol and pornography and all kind of corruptions that a human can go through. Well, almost. There's something in me that wanted me to break free. Now, how to break free, I didn't know. And the most accessible things were intoxicants. And I think that's the sad things about urban life is we are surrounded with temptations which are not suiting us, starting at a very young age. And I was susceptible to that, and I fell prey, drawn towards smoking marijuana. So yeah, I continued quite a degenerate lifestyle, and I was smoking a lot also. So I was smoking around, depends, but mostly around 10 to 15 cigarettes a day.
Going back to when you were into marijuana, how
Right.
easy was it to give up marijuana or let's say that entire lifestyle?
Well, it started with the alcohol. So I did alcohol for like 6 years, 7 years, along with smoking. So I guess I had a lot of it. It wasn't easy. It was easy to let go of alcohol. It wasn't a big trouble, because it got replaced by marijuana. And somehow I got over alcohol. So it wasn't a fight. But giving up marijuana was quite a fight. That was not easy for me because, marijuana does something which is similar to meditation, but without the hard work. So in meditation, you have to work hard, you have to sit, you have to focus on your breath. There's a game of patience, and marijuana just boom, quickly takes you there for a while and then gives you a crash. So it was such an addictive feeling for someone who is attracted by the world of yoga. So let's say I started around when I was 19 or 20, and until 24, 25, I was happily doing it. But after that, I wanted to give it up. So it took me a couple of years of relapses, constant breaking of promises. I went to a Ayurvedic center also for a Panch Karma therapy, and that center claimed that they help people who have addiction on marijuana, and I think that helped. That helped not just because of my releasing the bondage in my mind. That work I did on my own with a lot of mentors online who I listened to. but physically to remove the remnants of the marijuana which is stuck in our fat cells. Panchkarma is best for that because they use a lot of ghee and detoxification, because marijuana typically attaches to the fat cells of the body, and ghee and detox herbs of Ayurveda are best suited to cleanse yourself of all the marijuana debris. And once that gets released, I think more than 60% of people's cravings go away.
Let's say your first 2 days when you were doing the Panchkarma thing, means was it like you were completely addicted to marijuana, then you went to Panchkarma, or Panchkarma was like the third or the fourth step to get away from all this?
I had got done Panchkarma first before, but I didn't have the intention to quit marijuana that time. But when I did want to quit marijuana, I think if we had to put it in steps, Panchkarma was probably second or third step. First step was just don't need it, and doing a lot of yoga and other things to get beyond it. And there was a time that started coming that regular smoking of marijuana made me feel low. So people say I smoked and I got high. But for me now, I'm getting low. I was actually before at a higher state and I'm going lower now. And that's when I was like, I don't need it. This is not giving me the high that it did before. But then the problem remained that those occasional relapses after 2 to 3 patterns, or maybe the remains in the body of the substance. So then, yeah, I think second or third step was Panchkarma, to answer your question, which helped me, completely give it up. And after that, it was just, I didn't crave it at all. The crashes didn't happen, and it was gone from my life for good.
Even my friends, when I was also going into yoga and meditation, they had an experience of marijuana and they told me that you should also try this. And they had one common attribute to marijuana is that it just makes you feel happy. You don't realize that you don't have any worries or any stress. You're just happy. You being have experienced that, as well as experienced meditation for quite some time. Other than the hard part which you mentioned, what are the other differences which you notice in both of them?
I think marijuana is a stronger experience in the moment, and it is fleeting. It is for a small period of time and then it phases out. Meditation's effect stay with you consistently for a period of time in a very subtle way. So if it stays with you for a period of time in a subtle way, then it becomes a strong experience for you eventually. But marijuana in a given period of time gives you a much stronger rush than meditation would.
These definitely are some good points for someone who wants to experience meditation in that aspect.
Yeah. Just to add to that, the feeling feels the same, but what the actual effect is very different, in the sense that when you smoke marijuana, you won't enjoy the finer things in life, like smelling a rose or watching a dog play, or, playing with a little kid, those small things, or just watering a plant. It gives pleasure because our dopamine receptors are sensitive. They have sensitivity towards small stimulation also. But with marijuana, we get such a high dose of pleasure that our dopamine sensitivity goes down and it becomes desensitized. So we need more rush to have a little bit of fun. Meditation gives you more fun or more pleasure in a lesser rush, on a more subtle rush. So this happens. That's why people say when they smoke marijuana, I got stoned. Means your heart becomes like a stone, so you feel less eventually. You need a higher dose to get the same rush next time. But in meditation, it's the opposite. You start getting a higher rush in very small doses of life, in finer things. Just looking into someone's eyes can get you into an ecstatic state. And I think Osho talks a lot about this aspect.
So it's basically like when you're doing meditation, you are able to, let's say, one advantage would be that you can quickly retrieve information when you're supposed to.
Yes. Exactly. You have such clarity, utmost clarity. The coordination between different organs in your body starts performing at another level. And your endocrine system means the glands, the hormonal systems, which is like the key for your body to have a well coordinated outcome. That is optimally functioning when you're regularly meditating, even for a small period of time in a day.
Yes, these are I have very little experience in meditation, but yes, I have felt these subtle things, and they, I guess, impact the entire body, and you're living in a holistic manner, rather than what you said about in terms of marijuana, where it's a stimuli for that specific momentary period. Moving on, you I guess as I was going through your profile, you mentioned that you've done your first RYT course at the age of 22. Is that right? So what was the trigger to take that step at that period? Was it again connected to your previous lifestyles, or there was something else?
I was facing some health issues also parallelly what was happening. Of course, I'd done so much terrible actions. My stomach was never keeping well. I was gaining weight. I had no energy. If I had to walk like 20 steps, I was thinking twice that should I do it or should I procrastinate? So I was in a terrible position. My skin was not really, doing well, which impacted my psychology a lot. So I wanted to find solutions, and then my parents took me to a doctor who said, "Oh, you have to take these bag of pills for your life." I was like, "That's impossible." I mean, I was a great researcher, but when it came to conspiracies, but I didn't research much about health. But somewhere heart in heart, I knew, and it was simple logic that I don't need chemical pills to fix myself. There has to be a better way. So I nutrition, about ancient sciences, Ayurveda, yoga, fitness, everything came up, and I started applying that. But then I thought I want to go deeper. Called up my dad. I was like, I'm not coming to the office today. I'm going to Kerala for a few months. I don't know when I'll be back, and I want to learn Ayurveda. And it was a shocker. Trust me, Harish. It was a time when nobody talked about yoga and Ayurveda. We were living 2012. If you could rewind in your mind in that time, there was no mention of alternate healing therapies or nutrition
Right.
sciences. People were just having the marigold biscuits and chai, and they were like, "Oh, this is life." But now people think, now they want gluten-free cookies. So that was the world where I realized that, okay, now this stuff is enslaving us, to be precise. So I went to Kerala. I researched what is the place to stay in Kerala if you want to grow as a human. And I found Shivananda Ashram. I entered and I was like, this is heaven. Why was this hidden from me? There are people from all around the world. In a corner, some people are practicing Bharatnatyam, Kathak. Some people are just doing juggling all day. Some people are standing on their hands. I was like, what is this? I've come to a circus, but a nice circus. I was right next to a lake. Then I came to Delhi. I was exploring different yoga studios and different people I could connect with related to nutrition, but my heart was not getting fulfilled. So I was like, now I'll do a teacher training. Before, I didn't know what a teacher training was. But then I learned about it in the ashram in Kerala. So then I applied for a teacher training in Rishikesh, and I went there, and there were 60 students there, Harish, and not even one Indian.
Wow.
And in America, I remember that moment, an American guy came to me. He's like, where are the rest of you? He meant, where are the rest of the Indians, your tribe? Why aren't they coming and learning these high sciences? I was like,
Right.
I don't know, but I think this is a start. I'm here, and so will they be very soon. And that happened. Now everyone's flocking to teacher trainings, and it's great. I mean, I didn't see this happening so fast.
Can you help our listeners understand, if anyone wants to take up this course, what should they look for?
If someone's first of all planning to do a teacher training, they should do a shorter version, 7-day, 12-day retreats, and test out a couple of schools before committing to 40 days or 60 days. So that's number one. Not about who is leading the course. For me, there's a beautiful gentleman called Roshan. He leads one of the biggest teacher training programs in Rishikesh. And it's the most famous, if not one of the most famous teacher training schools.
Can you name the place where he teaches us?
Rishikesh Yogpeeth.
Rishikesh Yogpeeth. Okay.
That's what led me to choose the course. And I think it's important to see who's leading the course. This is the number one thing. If you need that person to talk to you, you need to feel like, oh my God, I'm being moved. It should not be too much of a theoretical course or only about asanas. Yoga is not about just asanas. It's not about how much you can twist or how long you can stand on your head, but who is your guru in that period of time? If you are not inspired by that man or a woman, then I think there is no point. If the curriculum is great or the beach is beautiful, whether teacher training is happening, that doesn't matter.
As you were doing these courses, I presume you were also doing meditation for that period of time during your teacher training course, even after that period of time. What was the reason for you to take up Vipassana?
I went to the airport to pick up a friend of mine. She's from Europe, and she'd gone to do Vipassana, and she came back, and I looked at her, and she was like so calm, and she felt like God's avatar has come to earth to bless me. And that's the kind of energy she was giving out. And she was just smiling and looking around the world with fascination, like, oh my God, everything's so special. And I was like, I want to be in that state, So that observing someone coming right out of Vipassana was a blessing for me. That's what moved me towards trying it out myself. But when I was doing Vipassana, third day or fourth day, I went to my the person who leads the group, and I asked him, can I leave? I can't do this. It was tough. It was really tough, to be honest, despite me doing yoga. So yoga was very dynamic. Meditation ke saath saath pranayam hota tha,
Right.
movements hoti thi. Sab restricted. You have to sit. And honestly, it was one of the most physically engaging and enduring retreats of my life. You have to sit for 11 hours in a day, back straight, which is impossible. So my back kept going down, I kept putting it straight, down, straight. This was my battle. I didn't even take time to meditate, and what they were saying, it was all about, can I keep my back straight for another 2 minutes, because they said that try as much as you can to sit. So third, fourth day, I was like, see, I'm not being able to keep my back straight. I don't have the stamina to sit for 11 hours in a day. Why don't I train myself and come back? So my brain started giving excuses. But he said, no, just carry on. Whatever you're doing is fine. Just spend the 10 days, do whatever. So that just released me. I was like, okay, I don't need to follow the technique so much. I just need to sit in silence. And that helped a lot,
One of my very close friends also has been to Vipassana, and he had shared a lot of stories that everyone who's undergoing the first 10-day course is having different moods every day. And like you said, you had a point around third or fourth day where you wanted to leave, whereas some people have a breaking point around seventh or eighth day.
So around sixth day, seventh day, one change that happened I observed was I started observing leaves of trees a lot. How many lines there are in a peepal tree's leaf. I started counting. I started staring at leaves and nature, and I started staring at ants moving in their pattern a lot. And that thing stuck with me, no matter what I do now, I see it in a very deep way. I see the different color variations on the same leaf. That's what I kept myself engaged. I started studying nature there in a very strongly observational way.
People had very good memories, even, or very good takeaways from Vipassana. But how could, let's say, someone who's very fat, who can't even sit properly with a good posture, could complete an 11-day, or sorry, a 10-day Vipassana course?
That's a great point. And I think that's where people like you and me come in the picture, and we need to keep evolving systems that have been created from before. That is a shortcoming, not a shortcoming, but there's a gap in Vipassana in the sense that it needs filtration. It needs people who have crossed the Yam Niyam, Asana, Pranayam stage to some extent to get into the higher stages of Pratyahara and Dharana. And Dhyan, they're at the level of Dhyan and taking you to Samadhi. So yes, I feel it's not a process, it's a trailer. I see it that way. So a fat person might not be able to sit, but at least for 10 days, they'll not have a phone in their hand. At least for 10 days, they would not be talking to their friends. So having said that, I agree it's not a perfect system. And that's why I found my business of body clock coaching, because I saw even forget Dhyan or Samadhi, people who start doing Asana and Pranayam, they don't have a schedule of eating, sleeping, sitting, standing, talking. They don't have a structure in their day. They're not qualified to do Asana and Pranayam. So I agree with you. There are a lot of gaps in the world of yoga, and I still appreciate people who started the movements with the gaps also, because if I've seen that in business, at least, that if you wait for perfection, nothing happens. If you start the process, it can always be improvised.
What are the most common reasons for not having good sleep?
People think it's their phone. That phone is distracting me. I'm on Instagram scrolling all night long, or just watching Netflix, or these Netflix series, people make it so addictive. What's my fault? I have to see the next episode. I need to know what happens. But I think it's to do with emotions. Our behavior is guided by our thoughts. Our thoughts are not the product of our feelings. Our feelings are sensations of our emotions. And if we don't target the root, which is our emotions, which are causing all the havoc, then our behavior and thoughts, we just keep working on our behavior needs to change. Let's change our thoughts. But where are the thoughts coming from? They're coming from your emotions. What is emotion? It's your energy in motion. Your energy, which is in motion in your body, your heart is pumping. That's why heart is the center of emotions. It's always pumping. It's creating that electric impulse called emotion. Right? That's what emotions are. It's the energy that is in motion. If it's not in balance, then you will have thoughts which will take you into distractive zones, into self-destructive behaviors. And when thoughts are like that, when you're thinking about just all the time about the Netflix series, you can't meditate and sleep.
Netflix or Instagram, or it could be any other streaming service or social media service. But these services will come and go. But again, it all depends on our emotions and how we hold ourselves. Do you think, as you help everyone with adopting these lifestyle changes, do you think the ancient principles of Vedas also could help with this?
So सबको पता है ये, हाँ. My coaching is also not about finding new things which nobody's heard of or magical कोई मैं box से secret box से निकाल के एक solution दूँ. No, it's nothing like that. Everyone knows सोने से 3 घंटे पहले तो तुम्हें डिनर खत्म कर लेना चाहिए. बहुत कॉमन नॉलेज है, पर 99% लोग नहीं करते. मैं ऑब्जर्व करता हूँ जो मुझे लोग बता रहे हैं वो खुद फॉलो नहीं कर रहे. इसलिए मैंने कोचिंग सिस्टम स्टार्ट किया, बिकॉज आई रियलाइज उनकी इंटेंशन गलत नहीं है. दे आर नोइंग व्हाट टू डू एंड डूइंग इट. देयर इज अ गैप एंड दैट्स कॉल्ड हैबिट्स.
That's true.
So knowledge act coming to answer your knowledge action gap में मैं हेल्प करता हूँ. एंड उसमें से एक चीज जो है अर्ली डिनर खाना, जो मेरे सारे क्लाइंट्स कहते हैं हाँ वी नीड टू डू इट बट वी जस्ट कांट. हम तो काम से घर we come very late from work, blah blah blah. But there is always a solution. I see that it's 90% are excuses, 10% is genuine.
Right.
It's just tough to change your pattern. You are so committed to your patterns that you give excuses to justify the patterns.
That's true. Means trying to change someone's habit and first letting them, because it is, again, I guess it takes at least 20 days, 21 or 30 days for someone to adopt a new habit, and making them realize on the day one that you're doing this, but at the end of the month you will have that effect, is difficult.
That's called delayed gratification.
We
delay our any action that delays your gratification is tough to adopt.
True.
Ice cream is instant gratification. Yoga is delayed gratification. Means you see the results a month or 3 months down the line. So I, with my clients, also use this method. I put a reward after every good action they have to adopt, and that's what been scientifically proven way of adopting a habit. This is the system.
Right. Creating a specific incentive to take action helps someone to do that part. That's true. Let's say if anyone wants to take up this body clock course with you, can you share that what they could expect, let's say in terms of timeline or in terms of daily effort, how much time they have to give?
My coaching sessions are once a week. So coaching with me directly is 1.5 hour to 2 hours a week commitment. And the actions that you need to do, which are decided in the coaching, is, let's say 10 to 20 minutes a day you have to take out to do something. But most of the times I've seen people are doing it on and off. So it's not like they have to carve out new time for it. It's just organizing yourself better. So doing a 10-minute morning routine or doing a 10-minute evening routine is mostly the time investment they need to have to follow through with my process. 20 minutes a day and 1.5 to 2 hours max is the coaching with me directly in a week. Yeah.
Are there any specific food choices that you avoid?
Right now, Harish, I'll pause on this topic a little bit. It's so important. People used to have milk from packet. Now they've come A2 milk or organic milk. This is coming up in India. But I still feel it's a corrupted way to have milk, because it's like, it might sound really odd, but it's like your mother is sending you milk in a packet and you get it at home conveniently and you haven't even met your mother. You haven't met your mother who's feeding you her milk. Her breasts are being pumped every day to serve you something, which is fine. I think it's a part of the culture and there is some science to having milk of cows, but you need to go and meet it once and say thank you, So that's one aspect. I think in respect to people having conscious milk, they need to have that, because all the people who supply good quality milk, they invite people to their place to visit the cows. And if nobody has a chance, I have a lot of options to visit their cows, or they can visit my cow, or just, have a connection with cows is very important. So I have a WhatsApp group where I have a lot of vendors who provide organic materials, fresh from Gaon, pure, and, well-researched products, because I saw that there was a lacking awareness also, but availability also. So people would say, Mishri to leni chahiye, but where do you get good quality Mishri? I invite them to get in touch with me and I'll add them to WhatsApp group. They write any product which was used by his ancestors, or any product which they want in the purest form. It is my duty to get them.
So, Anuj, finally come to the end of the show. And here's the last question. What message would you like to share with everyone?
Focus on the simple things. Do not go for the next shiny object. Oh, this new grain has come up which is going to save my life, or this new berry, or this new mushroom from Japan is just like the next health craze. Just sleep on time. Don't be addicted to your phone. That's robbing your health more than anything else. Wake up on time, get fresh air, eat food cooked with love. Just focus on the basics. I mean, I don't need to talk about what the basics are. You all know. Do them well before you spend your energy or willpower or focus on other advanced things, which might have some value, but mostly don't.
Anuj, thank you for your time. And
That was fun.
we will definitely link all our topics and discussions in the show notes. And where can everyone find you on the internet?
So my website, bodyclockcoach.com. And all my social media handles have the same name, Body Clock Coach, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram. Wherever you type Body Clock Coach, most probably I will show up.
Again, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks for giving me this chance.
Once again, thank you for hearing out the episode. All topics with their respective links and our email IDs will be available in the show notes. See you in the next episode.